Who want to get into business or entrepreneurship, you need to know yourself. Are you the kind of person that when you're thrown into an unpredictable situation, you can handle it? The best way to start if you don't have capital is to save a tiny bit of money and then educate yourself. Buy some books, take some courses. $10,000 is a lot of money for some people. I invested all that money in learning and courses. I'm attracted to Bali because...
Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we have Michael Wall, the CEO of Modular Agency with us. And today we're gonna be talking about entrepreneurship. Okay, so the first question is, how do you find a good idea to make a new business?
How do you find a good idea? I actually went through a lot of bad ideas before I started this agency, but I thought they were good ideas. So I think what sounds like a good idea could potentially be a good idea for someone, but a bad idea for you. I think you have to really know yourself and know what you love to do that can also make money and that you're also good at. So if you connect these three things, what you like, what makes money, what you're good at, that's the sweet spot. So for example, I started out doing e-commerce. I did DJing and nightlife events. I found out that these were all good ideas for someone, but not for me. I like to work with people and I like to sit around in the room over there and discuss complicated business problems for our clients. Somehow that is something that I love to do, and wake up in the morning and do that every day, feel happy. It also makes money and somehow we're good at it.
So you said previously that you had a lot of bad ideas. Could you share us some bad ideas that got you to this point where you can actually find a good one?
Well, when I started entrepreneurship, it's because I got some money from my father, which meant that I didn't have the pressure to go to work every day and spend all day at a job. So I spent about 6 months just experimenting with different business ideas. At the time, everybody was talking about Shopify and setting up an e-commerce store that is driven by Facebook ads. So the idea is that you set up your store, you go to AliExpress, and you can choose a product, put it in your store. You never have to import the product. You never even have to see the product. And then you drive sales through Facebook ads. So you feed Facebook some money, then it targets people, and then so the product goes directly from China to the customer in America or whatever. And it sounded so cool, and people were selling courses. And what I realized is that to wake up every morning and sit in a coffee shop and play around with an e-commerce store was making me nuts. I just didn't want to spend my time doing that. And I realized about 2 weeks into it, I also wasn't making any money. I think what I was doing most of the time was taking coffee breaks and finding excuses not to run my store. So that was I think some people are making many millions of dollars doing that, but it wasn't for me. So I think a better way to look at the problem is not about what's a good business idea, but what's a good business idea for you, because there's 100,000 ways to make money.
Okay. And you mentioned about Facebook ads. Do you really think Facebook ads now, people tend to use paid ads instead of marketing it organically?
Yeah, I think people are still using paid ads. That's a whole strategy. Meta paid ads go to Instagram, Facebook, and now Threads. So I do believe that you can use that to make money. And it should go along with your organic marketing strategy. You should have both of those things going at the same time. The difference is organic is something that you invest in and it stays there forever. So if you plan to be in business over the long term, it's worthwhile to invest in your organic marketing the way we do. Whereas paid ads is kind of like for the quick money. And you really have to be skilled in understanding how to run ads, because you can lose a lot of money with paid ads.
Do you think having a business plan is important? Or do you think, some people, they tend to be more improv, like they just, because ideas are coming out of their heads. So do you think with that idea, do you think you need to associate it with a business plan or just go straight for it?
I think a business plan is a very like academic style way to approach business. And a funny thing I learned about my business school experience is that all of my professors in my MBA course, well, none of them had actually ever started a business. So they're all teaching this sort of business theory, which to me is completely ridiculous. So I think the idea of a business plan, it comes from MBAs and it comes from people who are practicing business theory. But the truth is, in the reality, the world changes too fast. So as soon as you set your business plan, your idea might be obsolete 2 months later. Even in our business, we changed our business model 2 or 3 times since we started in 2 years. So I guess a business plan is good if you're trying to borrow money from your rich uncle, or if you're looking to get, Series A investment. But that's more like the deck, like the pitch deck. So probably the new business plan is the pitch deck, the investor deck. A business plan is something that you can create to learn more if this is a viable business, but I wouldn't actually use it to run a business.
Okay. And previously you said that the capital you have for your business, you have that resource, which is your parents or your dad or your uncle. But how would you give advice to people who needs to earn that capital on their own? Maybe it'll take them 1 to 2 years. So do you have like advice for people who who's not fortunate enough to have capital funding?
I didn't get a lot of money from my dad. I got about $10,000. $10,000 is a lot of money for some people. But what I ended up doing is I invested all that money in learning and courses. And I bought several ad courses, marketing courses, bought books. The best way to start if you don't have capital is to save a tiny bit of money and then educate yourself, buy some books, take some courses. I ask you guys here to take courses all the time. And through some courses, you accelerate your learning ×4 or even ×10 compared to trial and error. So there are some people who say, yeah, the fastest way to learn is to do. I think that's true, but also not true at the same time, because you might lose all your money experimenting with something. Why not take the course first, read the book first, and then experiment? So what I would suggest to young people who want to start a business, go online. There's tons of free courses on YouTube. Buy some cheap courses on Coursera, even like a lot of these video courses online are very cheap. And go just buy some books on Amazon. A book costs $10. Combine your education with books, business books, and practical courses, so you get the high level and then you get the tactical. And then you'll start developing confidence to start something that will actually work.
Okay, but what would you say? Because some people, I think it applies to most people, but once you're just learning and learning and learning without actually doing it, they don't actually understand how. For example, I might learn a course about how to do SEO, let's say, or how to do PR. But when I'm not actually doing it, I don't actually understand the process. I know this knowledge, but technically I don't really know how to do it. So what would you suggest in that case, what we should do when we're lost, when we are trying to get to that process?
Well, the course should tell you what to do step by step. So you take the course and you have your roadmap.
I mean, yes, but most courses, they're like, oh, this is how to do it, blah, blah, blah. But when you actually jump into reality, when you jump into the field, you kind of like freeze and like you're just very lost. And that's why some people nowadays, they prefer to have like a mentor or like somebody who could teach them at the beginning to have all these questions, right?
Okay, well, I'll give you an analogy. Let's say you have a coach for learning soccer and you practice every day after school and you learn different ways to kick the ball, different ways to pass the ball. And then suddenly you're in the soccer game, and now a lot of the things you learned, well, you didn't prepare for this situation when there's going to be 2 guys in front of you or 3 guys in front of you. So naturally, the course is only half of it. And the other half is your ability to deal with the real world and all of the surprises and all of the unpredictable things that will come your way. So it's not like making a paper airplane where you follow a course step by step and then now you have your airplane and you're ready to fly. It's more like the course gives you a foundation of how to handle unpredictable situations, which I call the market. The market will throw every surprise at you. And so I think for people who want to get into business or entrepreneurship, you need to know yourself. Are you the kind of person that when you're thrown into an unpredictable situation, you can handle it? In this business here, in this company, we hire people who always throw themselves into unpredictable situations. For example, we hire people who have lived abroad for a portion of their life, because that's a hugely unpredictable situation. If you are from an Asian country and now you're in London or now you're in America and you have to figure out how to get your apartment and how to get a job and make money and drive a car, and you go through that process, that is a perfect training for entrepreneurship, because you're dealing with unpredictable situations with no answer, no obvious answer. You have to use your brain. And that's just like business.
Okay, but in reality, how would you face, like, when you're thrown like a problem that you don't really know the solution to, what would you do then?
Well, I think there's a framework for making decisions in business and in life. The first thing you have to do is listen to your gut or listen to your heart. What does your heart tell you? So you might make a decision, go left or go right. Somehow, logically, everything says go left, but you don't feel comfortable in your heart. You don't feel your gut is telling you to go right. I think it's important to listen to your gut. Other times, you can just Google your problem or talk to smart people and figure out how to solve this problem. And then you can overcome a lot of things like that. The challenge is to have judgment, to know when should you listen to your heart and when should you consult a smart person or consult Google or YouTube to solve a problem. And so if you have this kind of judgment, you can go really far in life. Now, how do you develop that judgment? I think it comes with practice, with making mistakes, with age, with experience, a lot of factors.
Okay. But when you're following your gut and a few months later, maybe like a month later, how do you know that that choice is the right path?
Well, the money shows up in the bank and then you know that was the right path.
But how long would it take for you to be able to judge that, like, fairly?
Well, some deals that we've made have taken years. I'll give you an example. We took our team to Bali to film this podcast. And this is the beginning of our modular podcast. And I had to spend a lot of money to fly everybody over there. We had a project manager in Bali organize all cool different guests that we could interview. We spent 7 days there filming the podcast. So there was no obvious return on investment. But then we got the results and we started to publish our shorts, our reels, our TikToks. And it took about a whole year. But after publishing these kinds of reels for a whole year, clients started to reach out and say, hey, I like that. I like what you're doing. Can you do it for us? And now we have some clients who are, we produce reels for them, some CEOs, some entrepreneurs. We produce this kind of content for them. So at the time, there was nothing that told me we should do this. I just felt it in my gut that this is a smart idea. And I know that at a certain point, it'll come back and the return on investment will come back. But I had no timeline for that.
Okay, but do you think that maybe making this production in Taiwan and in Bali is a lot different. Don't you think that even if we do production in Taiwan, don't you think some clients would still look at it and be impressed? Because this production we're doing right now, it's a podcast. Basically, we're in a studio. If it's in Bali, then it's still going to be in a closed room. So how are people going to know, like, what's the difference? Is this in Taiwan or is this in Bali? What do you think?
No, we interviewed Bali based entrepreneurs.
Could you give like an example of how different these Bali entrepreneurs are that makes it like valuable for you to actually go there?
I'm attracted to Bali because that's an island that attracts all different kinds of interesting people from all different backgrounds and walks of life. And so when we did a production in Bali, we found a guy who opened up a fancy restaurant, very successful. We found a woman who opened up a language school. We found a German woman who runs a marketing agency. We found 10 or 12 guests, all doing wildly different things, all entrepreneurs. Some of them were doing big things, some of them smaller, but they all had their own stories to tell. And so that's what attracted me to Bali. Obviously, you can do this kind of podcast anywhere. There's entrepreneurs or interesting people to talk to anywhere. But for me, it was more like I wanted this experience of learning about this group of Bali-based foreign entrepreneurs and locals.
What could you say is the same like trait that each of these successful entrepreneur had when they were from Bali? One thing they have in common, maybe like a trait.
Well, when you meet enough entrepreneurs, yeah, you do realize they all have a couple of things in common. I think they all wanted more from life. They all wanted to push themselves out of their comfort zone to see what would happen. So I think it's less about making a lot of money, and it's more about these people were looking for a unique challenge. They wanted to test themselves to see how far they could go. And they all told me they were very surprised when their business took off in the middle of COVID. And the way they talk about it, they seem, even as they were discussing, they seemed very surprised at their own success. Like they didn't expect it to happen. So I think that the common trait among entrepreneurs is you're always curious about how far you can go. You're kind of dipping your toe in the water. And then now you're dipping your whole foot in the water. And then you're trying to see, can I touch the floor? And then maybe you don't need to touch the floor. Maybe you can just start swimming. And so I think people who succeed in entrepreneurship, they're not really chasing money. What they're chasing is to see how far they can push themselves.
Okay, so how do you know when to expand your business? When is the right time?
Expand, you mean to new markets, or you mean to expand like different services?
No, as in expand like to another country, have production there, have a team there.
Well, if you are running a service business like we are, like an agency, I think once you have a very solid service and SOPs and structure and operations, that's when you expand. When you can prove your business model in one place, then generally it'll work in another place too. But I wouldn't recommend expanding until you have very solid operations down. So we are at the stage where we are building up our operations and our SOPs. So we're not planning to expand yet. But I believe probably middle or end of this year, we'll be ready to go into the next market. And I think just when day-to-day operations are running smooth, when the clients are getting great results, then you're ready to go into the next market.
Okay. So you have a business, right? You have this agency. And you said maybe by the end of the year or the mid of the year, you would want to expand to a new market. What market would you actually, expand in? What do you think?
I don't know. Singapore seems interesting. There's a lot of tech founders, tech companies in Singapore. I would like to explore that market. Bangkok as well. There's a lot of founders there. So that's Thailand. But I'm more interested in establishing a global presence because these days, it doesn't matter where you're based. You can get customers from LinkedIn. You can deliver projects from anywhere as long as you have a good internet connection. Some places I wouldn't be going to are like Philippines, because I don't think the Wi-Fi is stable in the Philippines. Or even, like parts of Southeast Asia where the Wi-Fi and internet isn't stable enough. So I'm really interested in this idea that it doesn't matter where we are. For example, we have some clients in Europe who never even questioned where we're based. They just had the project brief and they needed somebody to solve their problem, and we did it.
And you said we could get clients from LinkedIn. Basically, we can get clients from anywhere in the world. So how would you face a situation where a client wants to use your services, but maybe they're from another country and currently we don't have a team in that country? How would you face that?
Well, what we're experts at is building teams. So what I would do is we would build a team, a local team in that country, starting with freelancers, contractors, then the project brief. And then, it's not hard to fly around and run projects all over the world. So it's a very common thing for production teams to be going around the world to do productions. So yeah, I would hire a local production team and maybe send a PM over and run a project like that.
When you think about pricing your services, how would you think what approach is it to know that, oh, this price is good enough for the customer? Do you customize each of your products and services to different customers? Is it the same price? And how would you actually price your pricing strategies?
There's a certain production value that we want to deliver, which can only be done at a certain price level. So our minimum investment is $10,000 a month for content and around $10,000 a month for PR. That's kind of the sweet spot where we can then have enough, capital to do a really good job. And, at the end we have to decide, is this business worth doing? So there has to be the margin on top. So as far as pricing, I think over the years we've actually increased our pricing because we wanted to increase our production value and find the sweet spot where clients are able to afford our service, but at the same time get a really good result for that. So that took a lot of years of experimenting. For anyone who's interested in getting into agency services, I think a lot of people price themselves too low in the beginning, and then they're kind of stuck with a situation where they can't deliver the quality they want to deliver. They're limited by costs. They can't go to the locations they want to go to. They can't hire the people they want to hire. And in the end, the project suffers. And I think it's because in the beginning, they don't have the confidence to actually ask the client to pay $10,000 a month for something.
How do you know when you're pricing your services too low or too high?
I think if the client agrees to the quotation too quickly, then you might have been leaving money on the table. I think what you want is the client to kind of think about it and let me discuss with my partner, and then maybe they deliberate a while, and then at the end they say, okay, let's go. Then you're correct, because if people are saying yes right away, then you're pricing too low. Now, if you reveal your pricing and clients immediately ghost you and they don't even reply your next follow-up messages, you're pricing too high. So I think it's just like anyone going shopping. If you try to negotiate with the shopkeeper, that's kind of where you want to be.
But how do you base your prices when you haven't talked to your clients? For example, now you need to have a foundation of pricing before you actually pitch it to the clients. So how would you know what a range of amount should you set that price to before talking to the client?
Well, you have to look at your own costs, and then you have to add a margin on top of that. So right away, you have to kind of understands what are your costs if you hire certain people, if you have an office, if you're paying taxes. And then you have to figure out, well, what's the margin that you want to add on top? Now, I think a smarter way to do it is to set your pricing first and work backwards. So for example, if you wanted to charge, let's say, $30,000 a month for a service, let's call it video production service. So then you work backwards. So what kind of service is worth $30,000 a month? So you probably have to have top level people, directors, equipment, locations, and then you build out your service from that point. And now, you know, when you talk to a client and you mention that it's $30,000 a month, you have all of the reasons to back it up.
But what percentage of margin would you say is like the best percentage to be around when you add that on top?
I mean, I think it's good to spend $1 to make $100. I think Warren Buffett said that. He likes any business where he can spend $1 and get $100 back. But that's pretty unrealistic. I think you never really want to go below 50%.
Okay.
In this industry, 25% is quite common after all salaries are paid out.